recording. Not sure how this will turn out because I'm recording in the back of the house. But I watch these videos come up, and they talk about people not having children in the first world, and they have this video, this couple, and for financial reasons, they're like, well, and they're both well-to-do enough, but they're like, oh, we can't really afford kids and our lifestyle. And one of the ladies, and a financial planner, says, the best thing for your financial future is not having children. And she's pretty much right. She's right about that. But I notice with all the criticisms I hear really coming from a lot of conservatives, they don't actually really aim to solve the problem. They just, generally their answer is always, well, just soldier up. It's your job and duty to have kids for the system. They don't say it like that. Well, like, what about your culture and your blah, blah, blah? Yeah, what culture? American culture? Are you kidding me? And what about your own country selling out your culture over in Europe and a lot of other places in the world? Like, no. You just need more workers. Let's just be honest about the reason. You've made a lot of debts and you need future workers, tax slaves to pay these bills. And that's why you're so concerned with this. And you understand the concept, some of the people that are like, oh, it's demographic replacement. Well, maybe there's reasons for that. I mean, we've only had how many decades of, male-female interactions being destroyed with a certain group of women that constantly think everything a man does is problematic. And what about the cost of living? Maybe, wild thought here, if we hadn't have told everybody to go to college, well, you won't be anything unless you go to college. And then we flooded the market with college degrees. Most of them are useless. Half of men's degrees are useless. 85% of women's degrees are useless. So maybe if we didn't have all these people in horrible levels of debt, like the minute they get out of high school, it's like what others have said. You've been spawn camping these people for years. So the moment they get out of high school, the only message they heard all through their childhood is, you have to go to college. No, not a plumber, not an electrician, not a tradesman. I mean, Better Bachelor did a great video recently talking about this issue when it came to, just how a guy, an elevator repairman, a union elevator repairman in Chicago makes like really goddamn good money comparatively to a dentist, 6 years of training to become a dentist, highly certified and all that. And then you get this guy who's in the trades and he's making goddamn good money, like $75,000 the first year, and it progressively goes up. And after like the fourth year or so, he starts having guys working under him. By 6 years, he was making something like $160K a year. Now, mind you, if you do the minimalism thing, live as cheap as possible, yes, you retire super young because you let compound interest work for you by investing. We don't teach that. And so you see these couples, these dual income earners, these dinks as they call them, and they're like, well, we thought about kids, but we can't afford it. And then they talk about egg freezing. Egg freezing is rather diabolical, if we're being honest. The only people that should really be getting their eggs frozen, just like men with the sperm, I could understand if you got a vasectomy, because you'd like to have control over when you have kids. I can understand that. But most of the cases where I see where someone should be doing egg freezing or sperm freezing, it's generally people that have some form of cancer and they don't know if the chemo is going to mess with their body. So I can understand those situations. But just telling ladies, you notice how they don't tell guys this? There's a reason for that. They tell ladies, well, you could freeze your eggs and, have your kids later with only a 20% success rate. You're smart. We've had a culture for ages that has basically taken away the concept of family and replaced it with just consumption and your job. Oh man, corporate culture. Yeah. We've replaced heart and soul with corporate culture. Now, one might say, well, what's the solution? The problem with the solution is that we don't have legality in this country that protects the individual who actually does the right thing, be it male or female, but mostly male. They're affected by this. Like if you go out and do the hero's journey, get a good trade, get a good degree. I'm not anti-college. I just think worthless degree, and also it should be a lot cheaper. You should be able to learn most of what you need learn at college at home. And my argument for that has been for years. If you can't take the time to read the materials at home on a computer, on a screen, then why the hell are you wasting your time going to college if you're not going to pay attention at home? And how much of this whole college experience is literally just a play day, before you go off and do the 16 tons lifestyle of constant work. But if you go out and get a decent trade degree, I mean, hell, I drive truck when I choose to work, and I make goddamn good money for sitting on my ass all day. Like, hey, here's this load, take it to this other side of the country, unload. Plumbers, electricians, engineers, people that do real jobs. You get a real degree, live as cheap as possible, and pay off any sort of debt. Try to go as low debt as possible. And then there's tons of cheap houses all over the Midwest, South, Texas. There's places you can buy. So hypothetically, if you were doing the hero's journey and you had your house completely paid off, and I've seen houses for like 50 grand before, and people are like, you can't get a house. Yes, you can. You got to look. They're all over the Midwest, little small towns. If you're debt free and you'd already worked hard and invested, so you're making more than enough money to get by, you could actually take lower paying jobs because you don't need the money anymore. You don't. And that's the thing a lot of people forget. But the problem with the hero's journey is that we still have a court system when it comes to divorce that basically destroys good individuals. Like, if let's say you're well put together, you have the house paid off, you have the investments, and then the other person you're with just decides, I'm bored, I want half your shit. Well, then all that work you did was for nothing, at least half of it. And then you get to see your kids potentially on fast forward, assuming you have kids. We're not encouraging a superior society, in the very least. We're not encouraging that. We're encouraging consumption and waste. Like, look at their car, look at their clothes, look at and basically it's designed to have you be wasteful your whole lives. And then instead of actually maybe building a family, like what most people have done for thousands of years. And I'm neither for you having kids or against you having kids. I don't really see that it's necessary. The only real reason they want you to have kids, if we're being real about it, is because they need more workers, tax slaves, to basically continue funding the system. Without all these workers, employees, yeah, all the free gimmies and all that crap, I'll take from you now, pay you later, Social Security, welfare, all that crap, all that fails. And then people have to face the cold reality that the producers should be the ones that are having a better life. Producing people should be the better life should come from doing something. But, you can just buy votes. And the sad truth of it is when it comes, inevitably, I think everything will eventually collapse because of this. If you as a politician try to fix the system, for the most part, the next politician that comes along and says, I'll give you all your free stimmies and a little more, they're going to get the vote. So what the politician tries to do is mitigate the problem as much as possible. If they're wise, if they're just parasitic, like certain parties are, then they basically just say, we'll give you more. And they won't even talk about the fact that how they're going to do is they'll just print money. They'll just print money. And these days they don't even print the money. They just add zeros to the debt. And that makes every dollar you have worth a little less. So yes, you will pay those taxes. Everybody will be forced to pay the taxes for a handful of people. And it's a parasitic way to be. So they constantly need more producers to pay for this crap. But where do we come back to the whole idea of having kids? Well, when everything's gone up because you printed fake money and you've artificially kept, the supply of housing is ridiculously low. The fact that you've kept the supply of housing as low as it is, that has a lot to do with why people can't afford to have a fucking family. Because where are the real jobs, the quote unquote real jobs, the cities, the suburban, you got to drive an hour each way, you figure for traffic as well. So an hour each way, you're giving up, let's say $25 an hour. $50 a day to go to work and back, and then 5 days a week, so $250. Then put on top of that that by 50 weeks, because 2 weeks off for vacation, there's $12,500. Then figure in your car payment, then figure out your insurance. Oh wait, your house now costs $500,000 or more at 6% interest, 30-rate loan. There's 30 grand first year, so you got over 60 grand just gone, and that's just for one person. What about Honey Poo's car and her lifestyle? How much of your waste and your spending is just to maintain this lifestyle illusion? And it's great for business. It really is. It's great for business. Keep everybody kind of, always primping, always peacocking. But if you were trying to make a world where you actually wanted people to have kids, you would aim for a debt-free world. You would aim for a debt-free world where, like when I drive truck, I can work a year and go to the Midwest and pay cash for a house. It may not be a brand new house, but it'd be my house, 1 year of work. Most people can't even fathom that. And so from my perspective, I should say, the whole dual income, no children dinks, And then the fact that people are recognizing that all these people are not having kids is bad for the long-term health of the society. You complain about the long-term health of the society, but you're not willing to adjust the problems that cause it to be that way. Your answer is just produce more workers, just produce more children for the system to become your tax slaves of the future. If you're not willing to adjust the money going out, and this is the very same problem you see in the UK and many EU countries where, you've promised everything to everyone to stay in power, but then you got to pay for it. So you constantly need a new flow of taxation workers. And that's also kind of the joke of like England. What does England really produce? Just like America. I mean, America still does make some things, but the majority of the crap we get comes from other countries. So in that respect, we have a managerial class and maybe some intellectual class. We do build some things. There is some timber, there is some metals, there is some things, but you have the illusion of the managerial job. And as AI and other technologies come along and replace you see a shrinking pool of work and money. You can't support a society off that, and especially not when you're asking so much in taxes for problems that those people didn't make. So it's not a surprise that you see people having less children or no children at all. But I mean, honestly, you saw the same thing with the boomers and the Gen Xers. We don't want kids. We don't want children. And those people, let's have a little tough conversation about that one for a second. Most people, when you factor in the cost of public school, don't actually pay taxes. They don't. Like when you look at like anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000 or more $1,000 per student per year through K through 12, you're not paying taxes. If you have 3 kids at $15,000, that's $45K. Then add in the child tax credit and a few other credits, you got $50,000 in benefits that year. You did not pay taxes. Ironically, the people who actually don't have kids are paying for the system. The 1% are paying for the system. The majority of people that are producers or like reproducers, sure, you're making more and more machines, more oil filters for the great engine, but you're not actually, when you run the numbers, you're actually a net negative. Most people are, including, and then figure in Social Security and how people outlive the Social Security they were paid. But yeah, it does lead to an interesting conundrum when it comes to if you'd done things the right way with the hero's journey and actually protected people's assets in marriage. And don't give me this prenuptial nonsense, because I've seen those things go south so many damn times. You would see a situation where these people could be debt-free when they're young and have a family. But we don't promote that culture. And we even punish it in divorce. It's sad. It really is. It's sad. I mean, and realistically, we as we become more independent as men and women, particularly as women have become more independent, there has been less reason for people to stick it out in the marriage. It becomes, I'm uncomfortable, I'm unhappy, let's break this up. And then let's divide up the assets. So that dividing of assets, when you see that happen to enough guys, eventually it does it tells a lot of, it's like a subconscious signal to a lot of young people. Well, what's the point in building something great if I could lose half of it? Why not just live for today? YOLO. So yeah, it's, before you tell these people, you need to have children to save your society, at least have a society worth having children into, where it seems more like the idea of home ownership isn't a 30-year prospect. Even that, how many people do you know were married for 30 years? In the modern context, I'm not talking about your grandparents. I'm not talking about maybe your parents, but hell, I was raised by boomers, and guess what? They were the Michael Jordans of divorce, like wind sprinting to get divorced over and over again. So yeah, without the proper protections and the proper ground to actually raise a family, the prospects of having children into a society where it's costing more and there's no real protection in marriage and divorce just doesn't make sense. So if you want to reverse that trend of people having less children, then you actually need to make the ground fertile for having families. Anyways, that's just some thoughts. Later. Peace.